cheers to another episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. I'm your guide, AJ Weinzettel, on this journey of stories showcasing the people behind the wonderful world of wine, where we dive into conversations ranging from terroir, viticulture, to favorite music, superpowers, and more. Please enjoy this episode of the Weinnotes Podcast. Meg, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, AJ. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's been following you for a little while.
Ditto.
Your story is amazing, and wow, we finally get to sit down.
I know, and I really appreciate you being here. We're here at AVP, the new winery collective in Portland that I'm a member of, and just really excited to chat about kind of what I've been up to and just sit down and have a good conversation today. So
it will be great.
Yeah.
Well, can I start us off with a little bit of a blind wine?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's do this.
Well, as you know, you're probably aware, you can say whatever you want to. You can say it's yummy. You can say it's yucky. Or if you want to dive deeper, that is...
I will never say it's yucky.
Well, yeah, I'm just trying to,
I feel like with wine, there's an audience for every wine, and so I'm never going to bash it. But yeah, I'm very, very curious what we got in the glass today.
Well, I try to find something that has some sort of relation to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm curious then what you have here.
I know.
Okay, because I feel like I haven't followed a template yet on my winemaking. It's a little all over the place.
It is a little bit all over the place.
Just experimental at this point. So.
And I have to say I like that.
Okay, good.
Right?
Good.
Just because it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah, keeps me on my toes, really.
I'm sure.
Oh, okay. Do I have to form an opinion immediately? Or?
No. I mean, if you want, you can...
I really like the nose.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. I'm
yeah.
going to keep on sipping it. But I think immediately it has this really nice spice to it. This deep fruit. I love it. Yeah, the aromatics are great. I would guess maybe it's in the Syrah category.
It could
be.
I
don't know. Maybe the Rocks District. I'm just thinking of all the great places in Oregon and Washington that could have some fun. Yeah. Anyways, I like it though. But let me noodle on it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely noodle on it.
Yeah. My dog is named Noodles too, so I feel like I'm always saying noodle on it.
No, that's great. Yeah. So going back to April 10th, 2010.
Oh yeah. Okay.
You were on a catamaran in Miami getting married.
Yup. Wow, you went real back into the archives.
A little bit. And you honeymooned in the British Virgin Islands.
Yep.
At that point in time, where were you with your wine journey?
I was just a passionate wine lover. I mean, I was in my mid-20s, and prior to that, I had studied abroad in Barcelona, and I think that's what really... that was my first introduction into wine, was study abroad. Before that, I was, grew up in a beer family in upstate New York and never had a sip of wine in my entire life. And I went to Barcelona my junior year in college, and I wasn't even of drinking age here in the States yet. And get over there, and this incredible table wine that you could get for €3 at the grocery store. And I just feel like I was spoiled in my first introduction into wine. And, at the time I didn't really have a sense of appreciation for it. I just knew it was delicious and just kind of would take whatever I could get when I was studying abroad. And then of course, I was with my friends and we were backpacking through Italy and France and these beautiful places with incredible wine. And so I think that's where my introduction was. And then coming back to the States, I had an appreciation for it, but I didn't really, I kind of just went back to drinking beer and all the things, all the well drinks that you have in college and after graduation. And so I think at my wedding, I was starting to become very, passionate about it, but it hadn't fully taken off yet. But I will say that my wedding dinner was actually in a wine cave.
Oh.
And we just did a very intimate wedding with just our immediate family. And then we had this wine cave in downtown Miami that they did this like giant wine tasting dinner for my family and my husband Tony and I, and it was just an incredible experience. So even though I say I wasn't really into wine then, I'm like, well, my wedding kind of was centered around wine, so maybe there's more there than I had originally thought. But
no, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But I think, I've always just been, I feel like wine has been a very slow evolving love, and now this career that I have. And so there wasn't any like aha moment. It was just kind of over time, just growing intensity for wine. So
yeah, no, I can completely understand. It just completely builds up and it overtakes you, and you're like, okay, I'm in the vortex of wine now. I'm just going to let it take me.
Yeah, and then it finally just came to a point where I was like, well, I feel like I need to do something with this, because otherwise I'm just drinking a lot, and I'm so curious and I need to know more, and it's no longer just a passion. It feels more like a calling.
Right.
As cheesy as that sounds.
It's not cheesy at all. Okay. No. Yeah. With the last name of Weinzettel, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You grew up in a household where your mom and dad had their own company, in forestry.
Yeah.
And you, out of college, decided to go get a corporate gig.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide a corporate gig when you knew the freedom that owning your own business provides?
Well, so I did go to Babson College, and they are known for their entrepreneurship program. And so when I started looking at schools, I knew I wanted to eventually start my own business, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that seeing my parents run a business together since I had they've been doing it since they were in their mid-20s and before they started having kids. And so I knew going into college that I wanted to someday start my own business. And so I went to the entrepreneurship program at Babson College out in Boston. And then upon graduating, I was able to get a job in consulting and business management consulting. And still at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted out of my career. I just, I found a really good company. They had, their culture was amazing. They had a really good team. I was recruited right in my senior year. And so it really wasn't until a few years into my career that I was just like, okay, I'm burnt out from what I'm doing. I still love my company and everything, but I want to do something on my own.
Right.
And so that's when my husband and I both quit our corporate jobs the same exact time and decided to travel around the world and just take some time to figure out what it was that we wanted to do.
And so with that, how did you convince your husband to be like, you need to quit your job too?
I think he came to me first because he was at Wells Fargo in their corporate banking division. And at the time we were living down in Miami where we got married, and we were there for his work, and he got relocated down there. And we were in Miami for about 2 years. And at the time with my business management gig, I was traveling Monday through Friday on the road. And so I never was home. I got home on the weekends. That's when we saw each other. I wasn't able to really make a lot of friends down in Miami because I just was never there.
Right.
And he wasn't happy in his job. And so both of us were kind of at this point, I was like, well, we studied entrepreneurship in school. I know I eventually want to start my own job, and I want to start my own business. And I don't know if this is what I want to be doing 5-10 years from now. And so both of us kind of had that moment where like, well, let's just both quit our jobs. And of course, like our friends, our family, they thought we were all insane. They were just like, no, one of you needs to keep a job. And we're like, no, we want to go travel. So we did. And it was, kind of through that experience that I was able to take a step back and be like, what do I really want out of my life? And what do I want to do? So, yeah.
Very nice. Yeah. It's, in reading about some of your expeditions, I mean, there was so much wine kind of intertwined.
Yes.
You're blogging for Coravin, and you had your own, travel blog. You were dog sitters. I mean,
we really did a lot of random stuff.
It was amazing to see, and then you met so many people along the way that also had their own business.
Yep.
And getting ideas from them, and as you were trying to figure out to come back home, you were looking at Portland, San Francisco, San Diego, Denver, and Charleston.
Yeah, quite a list of awesome cities. But
it is. It is. I'm surprised Austin isn't on that list. But anyway.
We did eventually go to Austin, but we hadn't heard much about it at the time. And I feel like now that definitely would have been on our list.
It definitely would have been, yeah. What made you decide to settle in Portland?
Yeah, so when we got back from our trip around the world, which we'll have to go back and talk about that at some point during our chat, because I feel like that also is what really got me even more so passionate about wine. But when we got back from our trip around the world, we were looking into the list of cities that you just listed, and we really wanted to try a city on the West Coast that still had kind of a small town feel to it, that was accessible to mountains, to the beach. And so Portland really kind of hit all those check boxes for us. And it also was affordable. And, here we had both quit our jobs, and we were starting to kind of do some freelance work in the marketing world. And, we were taking on content marketing gigs for companies, helping them with their newsletter, helping them with their social media. And, through all this, we're like, well, we're on a budget. We're both starting out in our own entrepreneurial ventures. And so we can't afford a place like San Francisco, even though we love San Francisco. And so we had never visited Portland. We just kind of heard from a few people that it was a really cool space. I think Portland for us just hit all the check boxes, and we had never been there before. So it was a huge leap of faith for us to choose Portland. But we had heard from numerous people that it was a really cool city, and a lot kind of a small San Francisco vibe to it. And we just decided to figure it out. And I feel like, we went to Portland being like, we'll try it out for 6 months. Right. And that was 9 years ago. So it clearly was a good fit. And then, of course, it only just catapulted my passion for wine, being out here by the Willamette, the gorge, and just it felt like that I was really part of something being here in the wine community, that it was hard to escape it. It was everywhere, even in Portland. There's so many wine bars, urban wineries, and it was a really cool place for me to see this industry. So
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Going back a little bit about your year-long trip, traveling around the world. Yep. You love your food.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, that's why I think I got so interested in wine, because wine and food, what's not to love about the intersection of those two?
Yeah, it is amazing. I was reading, like your experiences in Thailand, and you're like, yep, all the extra spice and sweat it all out. And
yep. I'm embarrassed that you went to the blog. You probably went to Landing Standing, which was our blog from when we did our trip. And I just I feel like I haven't updated that in 10 years, the website, and it's got to look so dated by now. But
it still looks fine.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a piece of history.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's something I'll always be able to look back on and just have so many stories from that year.
Right. And it's like a photo album at this point.
Absolutely.
Right.
That was like pre-Instagram, and yeah.
Yeah. And so being in the tech world, blogging about, 10, 15 years ago was this big, huge thing.
Yeah.
And to see people like Mary from Vindulge and Marilyn from Urban Bliss Life.
Yep, I just had coffee with her a few weeks ago. She's wonderful.
She is. Just to see those people commenting on that blog, I was like, yeah, I remember the good old blogging days, and I miss them so much.
Yep. Yeah, it really was a time. And then also we still had our blog when we moved to Portland. And so I got into kind of the food and wine scene in the city and going to the Feast, Little Green Pickle at the time. They had me go to a lot of their media events with restaurant openings. And so I was really able to continue the food and travel and wine journal with Landing Standing when I moved here to Portland, because there still was so much to do and see, and I was experiencing it with a new set of fresh eyes. And
one post I ran across, you had a picture of Ron at Function PDX.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, talk about taking a step back in time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now he's at Okta, just killing it. And
very much.
Yeah, and I still have to go there. I actually ran into him at the symposium, and I'm really excited to finally go see him in his element. He is one of the most enthusiastic people about all things wine, and he was one of the people who got me so interested in wine. I feel that also is a theme here in Portland and Oregon, and just talking to people in the industry. They're so passionate about what they do. It's hard not to also want to be a part of that.
Right.
So.
Very much. Yeah. I know you have some wines that you want us to kind of look over and taste and talk about.
Yeah.
Should we dive into one?
Absolutely. Should we also talk about the first wine that was poured, the blind?
I normally wait until the end, but let's go ahead.
No,
let's go ahead and talk about it.
So I absolutely love this wine, and I think it's something that I could have with food, but also just have kind of sitting by the fireplace, just cozied up with a blanket at winter time. It's really lovely. I love the dark fruits. Sorry, I was just taking a sip. That was that long pause. But I think the finish here is really lovely. And my guess is a Syrah. It's just the classic. It's everything that I love about a Syrah, and that was my first wine I ever made, and so.
And that is why I brought a Syrah.
Okay.
And we'll get into Australia a little bit, but Ribbon Ridge Winery, they did a Walla Walla Syrah.
Okay.
So this is a 2017 Walla Walla Syrah.
It's delicious. I really, really like that.
And, and also, with Wynn Peterson Nedry being the winemaker, you've been around some amazing women winemakers. Yeah. And, it just all kind of fit.
It's a perfect fit for me.
Yeah. I was looking around. I was like, I don't know what to bring. Oh, I could do that. Yeah. But then when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's it right there.
Yeah. Where did you find it? Or did you get it at the vineyard?
I got it at the vineyard. So actually
wondering where I can buy it in Portland. So.
I think Wynn probably still has some.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's.
I'm definitely going to get some more of that. That is delicious.
Yeah, it is. It is very good. All right. Well, should we take a quick little break?
Yes, absolutely. And we'll start trying some of my wines. So the first one I have is actually a 2023 Willamette Valley white blend that I did in collaboration with Kevin Green of La Randonnée Wines, as well as Scott Nelson of Resolute Cellars.
Okay.
And we did about 100 or so cases, and then we each had different allocations. I did about a 20 case allocation for Flipturn. And what's so great about this wine that I'm really excited about is that it really celebrates the camaraderie of, I think, Oregon winemakers. And both Scott and Kevin approached me right before the 2023 harvest, asking if I wanted to do a collab project with them. And it literally, I knew nothing about what they wanted to do, and I said yes. I was just like, you two have been my mentor since day one.
Right.
And the fact that, back in 2020, we all met one another, and when I started getting into the world of wine, and they have been some of the most helpful, informative, nicest individuals in my wine career here in Portland. And so when they came and approached me about doing a collab, I just was like, yes, let's work together. And this is so cool that this is all coming together full circle. And I now get to make a wine with the two of you. And so this is a Willamette Valley white blend that is predominantly Viognier and Riesling with a little bit of Chardonnay and about an 8% addition of Pinot Gris.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's quite an interesting blend.
From all different vineyards, and we did it, so the wine was made at, in Kevin's space. He works now at Walnut City Wine Works, where Michael Lundine's space is, so he has his own AP set up through Walnut City, so he has a lot of custom crush clients that he makes wine for, as well as his own wine, Le Randonnée. But we made the wine there in all separate tanks, and then what was really fun is we got to do blending trials, the three of us together. So throughout fermentation, and then when the wines were aging separately, we got to just kind of tinker around with different ratios and blends. And what was really helpful with this is that as a small producer, I only make 3 tons of wine a year, if that. And with blends, it's really hard as a small producer of that size to be able to say, oh, I want to do 10% of this or
that's
20% of this.
Hard.
Yeah, if you're only working with a few barrels each year, you basically, you can do a blend, but it's got to be okay. I'm doing 1 ton of the Syrah, I'm doing 1 ton of Pinot, and you don't have a lot of flexibility. And so by the three of us going in together with On the Fruit and being able to collaborate on a blend, it allowed us to be able to tinker around with the exact ratios that we wanted and play around with a product that was something that we could be really proud of at the end. So this is that wine.
And I have to say, the nose on this, I was like, ooh, I very much enjoyed the
and
the
we were really excited because for me, I love Riesling and Viognier because of the aromatics. And then the Chardonnay just kind of rounded everything out in the palate, and the Gris just added this kind of zippiness to everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a perfect summer wine, but it's also very complex. And what was interesting is that the three of us would meet up to do the blending trials, and we all make very different style wines. And so I thought that there would be a lot of back and forth about which wines people like the best and I didn't think that we would align, but we ended up, we would blind taste everything. So Kevin would kind of measure everything out in beakers and get all the ratios nailed down, and we would taste, 5 or 6 wines lined up next to one another. And it was really fascinating because there was a couple where Kevin was like, this is my number 2 choice, and Scott and I were like, this is my number 1. But for the most part, we were very aligned on what we all enjoyed out of the blend.
Wow.
And so it made it easy, and also it was just so fun to be able to pick their brains. These are winemakers that have been making wine for decades, and so to be able to sit in on that and have this be my first blending project and be able to learn from these 2 very talented winemakers was such a wonderful experience.
That is amazing. And I have to tell you, tomorrow I'm actually going out to Resolute to demo Block 55, my reservation system.
Yeah.
So now I have...
They will be a perfect client.
I'm sure, but also now I have a nice little, topic to talk to them about tomorrow.
Yeah. Are you meeting with Kathy and Scott, or just?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
they're such a great, and their space is really a wonderful spot that they have down there in Hillsborough, and that's where we bottled this past week, and and it's just been, I think, as I was mentioning earlier, I really wanted to do this collaboration, not only because it would allow me as a small producer to finally be able to do a blend, because up until this point, all of my wines have been single varietal, but it also, I think, I always like to really be able to talk to my customers and share my story. And I think that this really ties in with my story of, I am someone who came into the wine industry here in Portland having no experience, no background in wine. And I was able to meet some incredible winemakers and professionals in the industry who just welcomed me with open arms. And I think it speaks volumes to the community here in Oregon and that camaraderie. It's more about community, not competition. And so I think that this story of this white blend really kind of ties into how it was that I was able to do what I'm doing in the wine industry. And I don't think that you could get that in say Napa or other places. And, I just think that Oregon is a very unique culture in the wine world.
I would completely agree. I mean, it is, everybody does try to help out in any way that they can. Oh, but you didn't come into this like with nothing as a winemaker. I mean, you started going down the hole of, the rabbit hole of wine, in your travels, and then exploring, all the wine bars in Portland. And then did you start out with WSET 1 or did you skip to 2?
Yeah, so I did with Mimi Martin. She was a wine and spirit archive instructor here in Portland, and I did her introduction to wine series. And so that was kind of a 2 or 3 day course, but it was similar to WSET 1. And so I took that when I believe that was 2019. And at the time I was just like, I just want to learn as much as I can about wine. So I took her introduction to wine course. And after that, of course, like I just got even more excited about it. Like I thought that maybe that would scratch the itch, but it didn't. Like I was just like, no, I want to continue learning. And so I asked Mimi, I was like, well, should I enroll for WSET 1? And she was like, honestly, like if you took this course, why not just go to WSET 2 and just, it'll be a big learning curve, but you can figure it out. Like we got you. And so I just enrolled immediately into WSET 2. And, of course, then I was just like, I'll just stop at WSET 2. And then I got through WSET 2 and I was like, no, I'm enrolling for WSET 3. And so, of course, as one does. And so I ended up going all the way through WSET 3. And then at that point, I was taking various gigs in the wine industry, just trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do in the space. And so I worked in tasting rooms. I worked as a tasting note consultant. I helped on some marketing gigs here and there. And just really anyone who had any job in the wine or whatever it was, I was like, yes, I'll do it. And just because I wanted to learn as much as I could. And I was taking WSET 3 at the time. And that was the fall of 2019, and I asked around at a few local wineries to see if they were taking harvest volunteers. Never stepped foot in a cellar before.
Right.
And I just remember, I think it was at Southeast Wine Collective, when they were down in kind of the Division and 45th neighborhood, and they had a few winemakers in their facility, but I went down there to be a harvest volunteer. I was just working on the sorting line, but I think working with my hands, seeing the grape to glass transformation.
Right.
These lights in the facility are very like motion censored.
Yes.
But the grape to glass transformation, it just being in the cellar and just seeing how it was physically made just inspired me beyond belief. And I was just like, it's winemaking I'm interested in. Like that is what I want to do. And so at that point, I decided to not continue in the WSET and get my diploma just because that was more focused on other areas of the industry, not necessarily winemaking. And so so that was the end of WSET. But I mean, I got all the way through level 3 and there's a lot of studying, learned a ton. And of course, taking the curriculum with Mimi of the Wine and Spirit Archive. She was such a wonderful instructor. And that's a time in my wine career that I will just look fondly.
I completely agree. I took my WSET 2 during 2020.
Yep.
And it was all online.
I was going to say my WSET 3 was online because I think I was 2 weeks into the program when the world shut down.
Yep.
So we went from classroom to Zoom.
Yeah.
So, and that was an interesting learning. I mean, I'm sure you will be able to share as well, but it was an interesting way to learn all things wine. And
exactly.
Yeah. Did you have to get the sample vials?
So when I signed up, Mimi had like a case of like different wines.
Yeah.
And so I bought the case and got through it. But with WSET 2, it's more about understanding what grapes come from what region and understanding the characteristics. So, there wasn't the blind wine part. So I did okay.
Yeah.
Honestly, though, I came out of that and I was like, I failed big time. It was, I mean, it was like,
You're not giving yourself enough credit. You know so much about wine.
oh, I know, but what got me on that test was like, okay, so you have this grape that has this characteristic. It kind of tastes like this. What region does it come from?
Yeah.
Oh, sure, Australia. What
Yeah,
I mean, what
yeah.
I mean, whatever it was, but it was.
It was a lot of, I just remember with WSET the amount of flashcards I had to write to prepare for the exam.
Right.
Because it was, I mean, just the amount of sheer memorization of all the regions and the sub-regions and the grapes and yeah, there's so much. But it was really fun.
It is fun.
Yeah.
And it looks like that you have a lot of fun with your with Barrel Dork.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so you have your Instagram following and you do a newsletter as well.
Mm-hmm.
I will ask you what it's all about here in a second, but I'm just more curious on my side. Why are you doing a newsletter over a blog?
I think for me, I feel that with newsletters, I can just get in people's inboxes. You know, they can't ignore me. It's right there in front of them. I don't know. I like I think coming from a marketing background, I really see the value in email marketing, and people get something in their inbox in the morning that they want to learn about, and they're just excited to open, or I hope they're excited to open up my email and learn a little bit about wine for the day. And so, yeah, I think my newsletter with Barrel Dork is kind of my focus, and then of course, you know, social media and my fun tutorial videos. But my whole goal of Barrel Dork is just making wine fun and approachable, because I think that there is this pretension, or this rumored pretension in the industry, that it's stuffy, and I don't want it to be. I think that wine is it's a conversation piece. It's a way to connect people, you know, sitting down at a table with good food, good wine. There's nothing better. And so I don't think that wine should be snobby. And I want people to be curious and ask questions. And that's really what I set out for with Barrel Dork. And also just because I needed an outlet. I wanted to talk about wine, and I needed someone to talk to besides my husband and my dog. And so I was like, So similar to a blog, I was just like, I just got to start writing about this. I got to get on Instagram. I got to start doing videos on this and share my love of wine with others, and hopefully get people to pick up on their love of wine as well. So
yeah, and I have to agree with you about, you know, the newsletter. It feels like more of a connection.
Yeah.
You know, blogging used to be like that back in the day.
Yeah.
And I think maybe they're trying to bring blogging back full circle a little bit.
Yeah.
But right now, newsletters just kind of feel like that personal touch that comes in.
Yeah.
And I'm getting ready to write my newsletter coming up for April. And just finding the space to pump out 1,500 to 2,500 words is a nice calming effect.
Yeah.
And to see the open rate be like 72%.
That's a really good open rate.
I
But
know.
doesn't that feel good? Like when
does.
you get those stats back, you're like, this is resonating with folks.
Right.
And this isn't just me thinking that people would be interested in the content. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, and that is so gratifying.
Yeah.
So that's why I keep doing it.
Yeah. And then also getting those responses, you know, replies to emails. You know, I always, in my newsletter, I'll always ask a question to the audience. You know, so one of my most recent newsletters, I talked about how I'm going to Piedmont, Italy this summer. And I was just asking people, I'm like, does anyone have any recommendations? And I got a ton of people just writing me back, being like, oh, you have to check out this winery. And my wife and I went to, you know, this chateau back, you know. And so it's just really fun to see people just engage and be fascinated about what it is that I'm writing about that particular week or month. And
I completely
that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Do you want to do your next white wine?
Yes. Okay, I'm so curious what you think of this Riesling.
Okay.
This was the second white wine I've ever made. The first was the stainless fermented and aged Chardonnay that I did for my 2022 vintage. And This is my 2023 Riesling.
Okay.
Also, Old Vines, Columbia Gorge, so out of the Smithstern Vineyard, live certified organic grapes, and I did this all in barrel. So this was direct press, and then it went immediately into barrel after that, all neutral oak. And I had such a fun time making this wine because, when I did the Chardonnay, it was just in one tank.
Right.
And so I was just monitoring one fermentation and one thing the entire harvest, whereas with the Riesling, because I did it all in barrel, I had 6 barrels I was working with, and they all were behaving so differently. And so as a new-ish winemaker, it was really fun to have everything fermenting differently, tasting differently. It taught me so much. And I just loved having kind of like these, I called them my little teenagers, because I was like, they're all like in their angry teenage phase and they're all just behaving so differently.
Right.
And I was constantly coming in and tasting each barrel, and I feel like it really was kind of this labor of love, this project.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm happy with how it turned out. I just bottled it. I think it still has to open up aromatically from bottling, but I would love to hear your opinions on it. And
In a very broad terms, Riesling has this, like, ooh, it's a sweet wine. I don't want it. And so just right off the bat, this is not sweet at all in those regards. It hits me. There's multiple things that hit me. It's, high acidity, so it's going to, it's going to age for a good period of time.
yeah,
There is, like, on the finish, there's a linear factor to it that just kind of just grabs your attention and just holds on. And then there's like 2 or 3 other things, and I was trying to recall, but I can't recall them right now because there were just too many things I was thinking about.
yeah.
I like it, though. It's very
and
good.
I think it's going to open up in the next month or so here. It's still very tight coming out right out of bottling, but it was interesting because it has a few grams of residual sugar in it. But when you look at all the graphs on like what considers or what constitutes a dry wine and off-dry wine, this is still in the dry category.
Yes.
And I talked to multiple winemakers and they're like, no, this is a dry Riesling.
Yes.
Problem is that everyone is very opinionated about Riesling. And I've gotten so many people ask me on Instagram when I started talking about that I was going to be releasing a Riesling. They're like, well, is it dry? And that's the first thing people will say. They're like, I want a dry Riesling. And I'm like, yes, technically it's dry, but there is this perception of sweetness on the palate. And I actually am happy it's in there because I think that with the acidity, it balances out beautifully. And I'm very happy with the final product. But I'm just so curious as to, I guess, how people will enjoy it, because I think that Riesling can be very polarizing. And winemakers love it, and people in the wine industry love it, but it cannot sometimes be a hard sell.
It can be a hard sell. And then the other characteristic, as I took a second sip here, is haven't detected this much in other Rieslings. There's like a funkiness that comes around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, ooh, I really appreciate that. I like that.
Yeah. And that could be, the old vines and just, it was tasting so delicious during fermentation. It was this really juicy, just kind of, it tasted like a Capri Sun, to be honest.
Oh my.
During fermentation, it was so lovely. And so the label design, I work with female designers on all my labels. And the label design, when I was working with the female designer that I chose for this label, I was like, I really want it to kind of mimic that Capri Sun label, like be reminiscent of a juice box that I had when I was a kid. And so I want there to be this playful element with it. And I'm really excited to release this. Part of me is nervous just because with any wine, when you kind of prepare for the wine to go to market, your initial concern is always, will people like it? And
course.
is this going to be a hard sell, or is it just going to fly off the shelves? And so it's that nervous anticipation, but I'm really excited for this one because I think that it kind of dances on the line of dry and then maybe heading into the off-dry realm, where I think the people are going to be very opinionated, for better or for worse.
Right.
But for me, I kind of love that because it's a conversation piece.
Exactly.
And so the other day I opened it up with several other winemakers and a couple other people at the table, and there was like 6 people trying it, and everyone, like 2 people were like, oh no, there's a touch of sweetness, and others were like, no, this is dry. But people were arguing about it, and I was just like, this is great. I love this. Like,
And that's what you want.
Yeah.
Right? You just don't want to be somebody be like, yeah, that's good.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
go on, right? You want that memory to stick, you want it to hold, and you want to invoke a reaction.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that, and even for Barrel Dork and my wine education Instagram and newsletter, I think that this could be a great pillar of content because it does strike that conversation between people. And then, I'm also just like, it's Riesling. Why is everyone so scared of Riesling out in so I think it's just going to be an interesting year.
It will
getting
be.
this on the shelves and getting this out there in the world. And
Yeah.
so I'm excited, and I have, 1,400 bottles of it to sell. So it's going to be a challenge, but I
Right.
also didn't get into this industry for, I got into this industry knowing that this entire journey would be a challenge. So.
Right. Well, I mean, that's people like you who dive into their own ventures. It is a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's what we strive on.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
This industry certainly hasn't been easy, but it's not what I got into it for. So,
Right.
yeah.
Very, very nice. So who is the better listener when it comes to, you talking about wine, your dog or your husband?
Definitely my dog. Yes, he's my favorite drinking buddy.
Of course.
And of course, I'll do a post on Instagram and he'll be in the background. And instantly I have, 70 likes and 25 comments all on the dog. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm here too. But no, but I will say my husband has been so supportive throughout this entire process. And I know it hasn't been easy on him, just for me to waltz in the house one day and be like, I just purchased a ton of Syrah fruit and I'm going to figure this out as I go along.
Right.
And he just is, he loves wine. He loves food. He loves all the wines that I've made so far. At least he tells me that he does.
He better tell you that.
But yeah, when I
Right.
come home from events and there's empty or, I'd half full bottles, he's just like, yeah, I'll have some of that. And so I think he's enjoying the perks of the, the winemaker's husband. But
Yeah.
yeah, he's been so helpful this entire process and has kept me sane. And the nights that I woke up at 2 a.m. over, freaking out over something, whether it was during harvest or a big event coming up. And so I do, just appreciate him so damn much through all of this.
So that is amazing to hear.
Yeah.
And I won't ask you this question, but normally, especially husband and wife teams, I always ask the question. So it's the middle of the night and you get a phone call from your husband.
Yeah.
He's in jail. What crime has he committed? I'm letting you off the hook.
What crime has he committed?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. There's so many. Oh my God. That's a fun question.
So do you know Jess and Peyton from Approachment?
Yes.
I asked that question to them.
Because they're a husband and wife team too.
Yeah. Very first time I ever asked the question.
Yeah.
I asked Jess, and lickety split, without even batting an eye, she said, murder.
Murder.
And Peyton was like, what?
Oh gosh. I will say, so I don't know if you want to end up putting this in the podcast, but my father-in-law, he was taking his yellow lab on a hike in his town in Boston. So he was on a hike with his dog, about 20, 30 minutes outside of Boston, and there was another dog on the trail that just ran up to his dog Boo and just starts attacking.
Oh, no.
And so My father-in-law is the sweetest man. He grabs a stick from off the trail and just starts beating this other dog because it was attacking his dog.
Right.
And he just went into full defense mode. And so he told us this story, and like the other dog ended up being fine, but like, you know, he was able to break up the fight and everything, and both dogs were fine. But I will say it's got to be something I think Tony would go to jail over something about protecting our dog, similar to his dad.
Right.
You know, I don't know, but I don't know. That's just where my mind went. I'm like, it's something to do with Noodles. Like he went to prison or jail because of something with our dog. He was protecting him, and I will 1,000% pay that bail. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah,
why
of
wouldn't
course.
you? Yes.
Yeah.
I got to get back on the food topic just a teeny bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Teeny bit. When you were talking about like wine pairings and stuff, you know, food and wine, how they go together. Mm-hmm. I'm curious. So you have a hot air popcorn maker, mm-hmm. and you put coconut oil and truffle salt on top of it.
Yep. That's a weird flavor combo. I know.
I'm just curious. What do you pair with that?
Oh man, I love a Chenin and popcorn.
Okay.
That would be my pairing. Tony is like big buttery oak bomb of a Chardonnay.
Ugh.
And
okay.
so that's his style of Chardonnay.
Yep,
and of course, when I made my Chardonnay in 2022, it was stainless fermented and aged with a little bit of skin contact, super lean and crisp. And I remember when I was telling him that I was making this, and I was like, I want this to be more stylistically like a Chablis, where it's just very lean and crisp, just mineral driven. And he was just like, well, what about a big buttery he's like, well, what about a big buttery Chardonnay? You know I love those. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so we do have very differing, sometimes our palates can be very differing, but
that's fair.
I would say with popcorn, if we're having popcorn and watching a movie, he's buttery Chardonnay. I am like a Chenin, or really anything. I mean, depending on what you're putting on top of it. Like right now I'm in a big butter and just salt kick.
Okay.
Not the coconut oil, not the truffle salt, just plain, you know, what you'd get at the movie theater. And so, yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
It all depends, but yeah.
And so do you say pecan or do you say pecan?
You know, it's interesting. I grew up saying pecan, and I feel like it goes all over the place now.
Okay.
I tend to just interchange them all the time.
That's
What
fair.
about you? Are you pecan or pecan?
Well, so I was born in Missouri.
Yep.
I knew it as pecan.
Mm-hmm.
Spent some time in the South. It's pecan.
Yep.
And I was like, what? No, it's not pecan. It's pecan.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But I hear that you make quite a pecan pie.
My pecan pie is so delicious.
What makes it so good?
Semi-sweet chocolate chips.
Okay.
And then sea salt on top.
That would be pretty amazing.
Yeah. No, it's pretty good. Although I will say I had this one recipe that I followed for the last 10 or so Thanksgivings, and it was great. But I just tried one this last Thanksgiving, and it was with toasted pecans. So you toast them first, and then all the stuff is similar, but it was a toasted pecans that just made everything a little more layered.
Right.
And just complex, and I absolutely loved it. So I think I'm going to stick to this new recipe.
That sounds quite spectacular.
Coming from upstate New York, I mean, I feel like it was 50-50 on who said pecan and who said pecan.
That's
just
fair.
because I feel like upstate New York is a melting pot of different, you know, we get a little bit of the Midwest, we get some South, we get we get all the Long Island, New Jersey.
Right.
Yeah, so it's all over the place. Pecan.
There you go.
Yeah.
You were talking about watching a movie, right? How come you never laughed out loud at a movie?
I only laugh out loud with dog humor.
That's what I hear. Why?
Yeah, no. Where are you getting all this information too? You really did your research.
A little bit. Just a little bit.
I don't know. Yeah, it's one of those things. I love comedies and I watch them all the time, and I find so many things funny, obviously, and when I'm watching movies, but what gets me to laugh out loud is just animals doing dumb things. And I can't tell you why. It's just,
Okay.
it's so pure.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
I'm on I don't know if you're on TikTok, but
I can't.
yeah, no, it's it's a whole world. But I will say I'm a lurker on TikTok, and I just like going and watching the dumb dog videos. And that will get me to belly laugh all the time. But otherwise, yeah, no, I will silently laugh.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That is fair.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about Flipturn itself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back pre-2010.
Mm-hmm. Pre-2010.
Pre-2010.
Wow, okay.
So in high school and college, you were a competitive swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still curious and keep up with the sport?
So when I moved to Oregon, I actually got really into running just because you can do it year round here.
Right.
And there's amazing trails, beautiful lakes. And so I found that I started moving away from swimming and getting into running when I moved to Oregon. But then I got injured. I jumped back in the pool because part of my PT, they were just like, well, you can't, I broke my heel in 2016.
Ouch.
Doing a half marathon in Bend. And so when I was doing rehab, they're like, well, swimming is an excellent exercise. So do some of that. And I was like, great. I did this all through college, but no, I will always consider myself a swimmer. I pretty much swam competitively from when I was 5 or 6 years old all the way through college, and I still love it to this day. I find that I don't do it as much because it takes effort to go find a
good
pool to be a member at, and you got to get all your gear. Whereas with running here, I can just slap on my sneakers and go in my neighborhood or go to Forest Park in Portland. So the ease of being able to run, I feel like, is what I'm doing more of these days. But I named my wine label Flipturn, not only because it kind of, I feel that wine is my adult hobby and passion, and Flipturn was my childhood and my adolescent kind of hobby and passion. And I kind of married the two because for me, I kind of came unexpectedly into the world of wine. I came from business school. I was a business management consultant. Then my day job is in marketing, and I never in a million years thought that I would get into the world of wine and make wine nonetheless. And so for me, it was this entire flip and turn in my career and this diving into the world of wine, cheesy pun.
Right.
That I was like, and then of course, and it was really fun when I was coming up with my label name. I got a few of my girlfriends together. I was like, I'm going to order pizza, get us a bunch of wine, and I need your guys' help brainstorming names for my label. And we just had a ball of a night. They came over, of course, we got a little tipsy towards the end of the night, and the brainstorming just got better and better. But everyone agreed, we're throwing names out left and right. We had a whiteboard up, and we were just jotting all these names down. And everyone really liked Flipturn. They're like, it ties into kind of how you got into wine and this flip and turn, but it also, ties back to your story of your childhood. But then it's just a fun and zippy name, and there's a lot of marketing potential here. And so, a long story short, my friends helped me come up with it, but I'm really I think that it does tie into just kind of where I'm at in my wine journey, and also just wanting wine to be playful and not pretentious. It's
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And kind of one of the reasons I asked about, if you kept up in the world of swimming, the Olympics are getting ready to come up.
I know. I should try to sell to them, although it's probably way too late now. And I'm only distributed through Oregon, but
But there's a person to watch during the Olympics this year. Leon Marchand.
Yes.
He is so last month, he broke the NCAA record in the men's 500 freestyle for the Pac-12 championships. 4 minutes, 6 seconds.
Damn.
6.18 seconds, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he just blew him out of the water.
Yeah. I definitely have to find a way to sell my wine or something at watch parties, and I think that it'll be really cool to see the Olympics this year. And
It will be.
Yeah.
I mean, you should set up your own like watch party or something.
I really should. Yeah.
Yeah. That would be fun.
Yeah. Some wine bar or something here in Portland.
Yeah.
The TV. Yeah, okay. There's some good ideas.
I think that you can make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also some good, French food or something because it's in Paris.
That would be awful. Yeah, some nice fresh croissants.
Yeah. Okay. We got some good ideas going.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
We have one more wine that you want to dive into?
So this one, I know I had you try some of my newer wines that still have all the bottle shock, but this one is my 2021 Cabernet, which I released this past November. And this one is a wine that I'm really proud of. I started making wine in 2020, and so 2021 was my second vintage. And when I started learning about wine, Cabernet was one of the first varietals I was exposed to. I feel that Cabernet is so mass-produced and it's grown everywhere that it's the red wine that everyone knows the most about.
Right.
And in learning about all things wine, I feel like I had some really excellent examples of Cabernet. And I had some really bad examples of Cabernet where I was buying, bulk Cabernet at the grocery store and it was a yellowtail so I'm as I'm sure everyone has had their fair share of Cabernet. And so when I started making wine for Flipturn, I remember my second vintage when I was looking at what I wanted to make. I was just like, you know what? I want to see what I can do with Cabernet because I feel that it has this reputation of being a meal in a glass, really high alcohol, and just kind of a punch in your face of just all the things, flavor, oak, and I wanted something that was going to be food friendly because that's how I like to approach all my wines is what are they going to pair with?
Right.
Going back to the beginning of our discussion where I talked about my time in Spain, that's where I really learned about wine was in Barcelona, where wine was always there paired with food. And so that's how I've always taken my winemaking approach is I want all my wines to be very food friendly, not overpowering, not overblown with alcohol. And so I sourced my Cab Sav fruit from Kiona Vineyards out in the Red Mountain, which is known for its Cabernet, but I think I was the first pick at the vineyard site because I was like, I really wanted to pick early the fruit so that it would retain its acidity, be lower in alcohol, because I was like, I don't want a 15% Cabernet.
Right,
I want it to have a lot of finesse and elegance. And so this Cabernet, with the early pick, it only clocked in at about 12.9 ABV.
Wow.
So it's incredibly light-bodied. And I also didn't want it to be overwhelmed by oak, but I wanted it to have a little bit of oak to add some complexity in there. And so it's about 25% new oak, 75% neutral, aged about 22 months, native fermentation, minimal intervention, very small production, about 75 cases produced. But yeah, I think that it has this kind of feminine approach to it. And when I have people try it, I think that they're expecting like Eastern Washington Cabernet just to be this big aggressive wine. And everyone seems to be really pleasantly surprised when they try it, that it's not your typical or your stereotypical Cabernet. It's very smooth and approachable, and that was what I wanted when I started kind of blueprinting, what this wine would look like, and I'm very happy that it turned out the way that it did.
And tasting this back in December, I was surprised when I first tasted it, and again, and revisiting it now, I am like, yep, that's exactly how I remember it. Mm-hmm. And so if I was to kind of describe, a normal cab, you immediately, you take that sip and your mouth immediately goes.
Yep.
And that's not the case here, right? You get this beautiful elegance of being able to actually taste the fruit.
Yeah.
And then you can appreciate the tannin for what it is. And you're just like, okay, now I can I can enjoy both worlds a little bit.
Yeah.
And then to pair that with food, like it is at a perfect spot.
Yes.
And a cab at 12.9.
Oh, I mean, Pinots are hard to find sometimes at that, like,
exactly.
Yeah, like it's a very low alcohol, it's a year-round Cabernet too. I mean, I find that I drink Cabernet in the winter. That's like always reserved for my winter wines. And I'm like, this I could, even like I've had it chilled and it tastes delicious and it's so versatile. And just, again, I think that I tend to pick wines that are a hard sell on people, but then I like convincing them otherwise. Like with my Chardonnay, I've had so many people at events being like, oh, I don't like Chardonnay. And I'm like, but try this. It's very and I feel like that's kind of, I mean, if we're talking about what my theme is, it seems to be wines that, I like to convince people otherwise. And I think that's what I was looking to do a bit with this Cabernet. Just being like, Cabernet is not, it doesn't have to all be big and juicy and powerful and in your face. It can be very elegant and refined. And, I think that that's also the beauty of wine in general, is that every grape is so versatile. And, you have to just kind of be able to not take these, just not take these preconceived notions or what you hear in the media about a particular wine, and just form your own opinions and be curious.
Right.
So,
and I think that is more of your motto, is just to be curious. You know enough about wine and you're like, ooh, what if I did this? Or what if I did that?
Yeah.
And then you're just scratching your own itch and you're like, ooh, yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. And even in I think WSET really for me was where I learned how versatile grapes can be.
Right.
Just looking at Riesling, for example, and a dry style Riesling from Austria versus a, off-dry to sweet style Riesling from Germany, and how different they can be. I mean, it's night and day. And then also not writing a wine off completely because it may not taste good in that moment. It's like, well, okay, if you don't like an off-dry Riesling, maybe revisit it with a nice spicy Thai dish, and then form an opinion, because I think wine is not only really versatile, but it's a time and place.
Right.
And what may taste good one day or for one occasion may not be a good fit on another.
Right.
And so just continue to keep an open mind when it comes to wine.
You have to. Yeah. A while back, you said success is not about money. Success is about being able to live life on your terms. I can't wait to see what the future has in store.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, deep cut again.
I try.
I know.
I don't know. From the outside looking in, it feels like that you have achieved that.
Yeah.
In the next, say, 10 years, if you could have like a crystal ball, like what is your goal? What is your vision? What are you driving toward?
I think for me, I always got into wine with the notion that it was always going to be a passion and a hobby, and I was never going to treat it like a job.
Right.
I will say I've gotten away from that a little bit because it is a ton of work. And so there are some days where it does feel like a job, but I also still love it immensely.
Right.
And I didn't have that with my previous gigs in business management consulting. Some of the other startups that I did, I feel that I lost that, and I haven't done that yet with wine. I feel that even though there are days during harvest where it's a 16-hour day, and then you get up the next day so sore and tired, but you do it all again, I still find wine to just be so incredibly inspiring, and the people in the industry to continue to motivate me. And so I think, looking ahead, I do know that there are going to be days where it feels like a lot of work and it feels like a job, but I do think I will always be passionate about this. And that's what I intended to do when I got started in the industry, is just have it be something that I love doing. And I love doing it. And I hope it stays that way. And I think that when I'm, looking about whether I get the question from everyone, they're like, oh, well, are you going to turn this into your full-time gig? Are you going to do, 20 tons a year, or, get your own winery and your tasting room? And I'm just like, however I grow this,
Right.
or if I just keep it the same size for however many years, I never want to lose sight of why I got here. And that was just to be curious, be passionate, love what I do, and just don't lose sight of that. So
Yeah, no, I think that's great.
I don't know what the future holds for me, but I just want to keep that all in check.
I think that's a very good idea to do. Yeah. Well, I have some rapid fire questions and I'll get you out of here.
Okay.
Favorite artist to listen to during harvest?
Man, I will say that I have worked several harvests with Christina and Gonzalez Wine Company and her winemaking assistant, Shalina. And during harvest, when the girls are in the cellar, it is Madonna blasting on the speakers. And I will say, I think that's probably my favorite. Yeah, the Madonna radio on Spotify in particular.
Okay.
Because there's just some fun jams.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Your favorite indulgent food?
Favorite indulgent food? I will say Ben & Jerry's cookie dough or half-baked ice cream or fish food. Yeah,
Okay.
but ice cream for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you could choose a superpower, what would it be?
I think I would teleport because I love to travel. And I would love to just be like, I'm going for a glass of wine in Paris tonight.
Oh,
And
I
think that would be my favorite. Not have to worry about hopping on coach or booking a flight, just being able to say, I want to be here and I want to be there right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be amazing.
Yeah, teleporting for sure.
Harvest notes, are they digital or handwritten?
So with AVP, we're now getting up on Vintrace, the winery software. And so I'm moving to digital, but I'm all analog. Everything's by hand right now. So I have a binder that if my house ever got caught on fire, it would be get my husband out, get my dog out, go back for the wine journal if I can, because it's all there.
Right.
So, yeah.
Very nice. Last book you read, it could be Audible or it could even be like a podcast or something.
Project Hail Mary.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was phenomenal. It was on Audible. And that was, one of my favorites. And they're coming out with a movie now. So
I'll have to dive into that.
Oh, you haven't read it?
No.
Oh, you will love it.
Okay.
It's so good. Sci-fi, which I'm not a huge sci-fi gal, but this in particular, it was absolutely wonderful. It's by the same author that did The Martian.
Oh, that was a good book.
Yeah.
That was a very good book. All right. Well, do you have any questions or anything that you would like to ask me?
Tell me a little bit about your reservation software.
Oh, reservation.
If you're ready to talk about it.
Yeah. No, so Block 55, being out in the world of wine and in the vineyards, we all are aware of just like a special block in the vineyard that produces amazing fruit.
Yep.
Well, Block 55 is all about giving people the ability to find amazing places to taste wine.
Yeah.
And so over the last, coming up almost 5 years now, I've heard all of these stories and I retell them and I want to help out more and do more. And, 2020 came around, everybody was doing reservations. I saw a majority of people using Talk.
Yep. I was going to say that was my go-to.
Yeah. And some people can't afford Talk. It's expensive. And I've seen like what it looks like on the back end to just to set up an experience.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. And I've talked to other people. They're like, their customer support is great, but I can't figure out how to do it. I mean, they'll fix it for me, but I got to call them every time I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I met with a winemaker last week and, had them run through the process of making a reservation, super easy. And then I just handed them my iPad and I was like, create a new tasting experience.
Yeah.
And I just handed them the iPad. I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And poof, within 2 minutes, it was done.
So a lot more user-friendly than talk.
A lot more user-friendly.
That's good.
And way more affordable.
Yeah.
So that is my, to be able to help out on that front, and provide a service that wineries can use. And it's not crazy expensive and it's easy. I mean, like putting that all together, that's my goal.
Yeah. And I think there's even really some cool opportunities that you could do with smaller producers that don't necessarily have a tasting room, but could be able to, because I know here we're able to do, we're able to have guests come in and have them do barrel tastings. And I know that there's talk of having kind of more hosted experiences here. And so I was just thinking of other custom crush facilities and, or, whether it's booking. I think that there are a lot of really cool opportunities that you can kind of tap into some smaller producers to create those more intimate client interactions.
Yeah. So that's what I'm working on. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is, and I'm sitting here and you're talking about barrel tasting and I forgot you got us some Sangiovese.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I forgot. So,
I know.
My gosh, this is like bonus material.
Sangiovese, this is from, that was a spit bucket. Glad I did not pour that into your glass. It was red. It was about the same color. I was like, it looks similar. So this is my Sangiovese 2023.
Okay.
I got this I got the fruit out in Walla Walla on the Oregon side. So Milton Freewater, kind of near the Rocks District. This is incredibly light-bodied. It went through a 7-day fermentation. Native fermentation, and it just kicked off. And it was fully dry in 7 days. Like, that was something that I was just like, oh my gosh, like it was so quick how quick it went. But I think it was, and there's a lot of theories running around in the AVP space with being on the Bob's Red Mill campus. There's a lot of yeast.
Up in the air. Yeah.
I don't think anyone here used commercial yeast. Everyone was native ferment, and everyone's fermentation this year just kicked right off. Wow. So anyways, this is incredibly light bodied because it didn't get a ton of extraction, but I think it's going to make for an incredible just table wine, just very akin to a Chianti that you would see in one of those like little baskets. And I'm happy with it. What I've learned about Sangiovese is it's in the early months, very temperamental. And so it can have moments where it's tasting very reductive, moments where it just kind of is very muted, and then you'll come in 2 weeks later and just the aromatics are beautiful. So I'm learning to just be patient with it. It still is in its angry teenage phase, but it has this kind of earthy element to it that is really unique that I'm loving right now. But I mean, I was in here 2 weeks ago and it just tasted super fruity and fresh. And so it's gone all over the place, but I wanted to pour it for today and just kind of see where it's at.
I appreciate it. And I have to say, it's absolutely delicious.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me what you think. What are you picking up on the nose? Because it's been all over the place.
What I'm picking up on the nose is I'm not getting fruit, but I'm getting more of I can't describe it very well. I would say like an earthiness to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I've had some other Sangioveses, stateside.
Yeah.
And I've been like,
yeah.
But this, I'm like, it's light, it's vibrant, it's fruity. I'm like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I find that at least right now, and it has gone all over the place with its flavor and aromatic profile, but I find that the palate is very fruity and the nose is very earthy or kind of savory.
Yes,
And
there
so
you go.
they don't match, but I kind of like that sometimes because I love it when I get a wine where the aromatics don't necessarily match the flavors, because I feel like I'm just getting two wines and then
Right.
I'm just like, oh, this is a fun little experiment. Like, and again, like, it's a conversation piece. And
It is.
I think this was a Brunello clone, which I was really happy with. Wheatfield Vines was the vineyard that I sourced the fruit from. And they sent me a list of all the different clones of Sangiovese they had. And I personally love Brunello. I mean, I will spend. There is no budget when it comes to Brunellos. Like, I'm just like, I see it in a bottle shop and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get it. I don't care that it's $120. It's an investment in my future. But I was really excited to work with it, because I feel that when I started learning about wine, when I was studying abroad, and I went to Italy, it was all these wonderful wines from Tuscany. And again, super cheap, or not cheap, I would say affordable, high, like wonderful quality and excellent value wines. And just absolutely delicious, so wonderful with food. And so I'm excited about this one.
I would be very excited about it. That was, yes, very much so.
Yeah, it's my little angry teenager right now, but it's I'll be excited for when it's in bottle and people can enjoy it. So
I'm very much looking forward to that day. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And if you don't have anything else, I think that's it.
I think we're good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this flavorful voyage through the world of wine on the Weinnotes Podcast. I've been your host and guide, AJ Weinzettel, and it's been an absolute pleasure sharing these captivating stories with you. But alas, like the last sip of a fine vintage, our time together must end. But don't fret, my wine-loving friend. The cellar doors of the Weinnotes Podcast will always remain open, waiting for you to return and explore new conversations, stories, and musings from the captivating people behind the magical world of wine. Before you go, hit that subscribe button on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and don't forget to leave a sparkling 5-star review to help spread the word. Until our glasses clink again, remember to savor life's moments and let the spirit of wine and camaraderie linger on your palate. Cheers, and as always, may your wine glass be full, your heart be light, and your journey be delight.